I'm Hazel, 34, and I never thought my life would unravel over turkey and cranberry sauce. For years, my parents had been my support system, watching my twins while I worked and rebuilt my life after divorce. We had what I thought was a perfect arrangement. I fixed things around their house, they helped with childcare. Until that Thanksgiving, when Dad cleared his throat and announced they were done babysitting. Just like that, my safety net disappeared. Before I tell you what happened after I walked out of that Thanksgiving dinner, let me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if you've ever had to stand up to family who took you for granted. I should probably start from the beginning. I'm a mechanical engineer at Westfield Manufacturing, and I've been there for nearly 12 years now. I love my job, the problem-solving, the challenges, even the occasional all-hands-on-deck crisis when production hits a snag. But 3 years ago, my life took an unexpected turn when my husband, Jake, decided that our marriage wasn't working for him anymore. We had just celebrated our twins' second birthday when Jake got a job offer in Seattle, 3,000 miles away from our home in Pennsylvania. Instead of discussing what this might mean for our family, he had already accepted the position when he finally told me his bags were practically packed. Jake had always been ambitious, but I never thought he'd choose his career over his family so easily. The divorce was quick, surprisingly civil, considering the circumstances. Jake was generous with financial support, but made it clear that frequent visits wouldn't be possible given the distance. Our twins Noah and Emma were too young to really understand what was happening, only that Daddy wasn't around much anymore. That's when my parents, David and Martha, stepped in. They lived just 15 minutes away and were recently retired. Dad had worked in banking for 40 years, and Mom had been an elementary school teacher. They offered to watch Noah and Emma 3 days a week while I worked, and I accepted their help gratefully. The other 2 days, I arranged flexible hours with my understanding boss. My relationship with my parents had always been good, if not particularly warm. Dad was the practical type, not one for emotional conversations, while Mom always deferred to his decisions. But they loved their grandchildren fiercely, and for that, I was eternally grateful. What Dad did value was my handiness around the house. My grandfather had taught me everything he knew about home repairs when I was growing up. "Always better to know how to fix things yourself, Hazel," he would say. By the time I was 16, I could rewire a light fixture, fix a leaking pipe, and troubleshoot most household appliances. For the past 15 years, I'd been my parents' on-call handyman. At first, it was just small jobs during college breaks. Dad would proudly tell his friends, "Why call a repairman when my daughter can fix it better and for free?" I didn't mind then. It felt good to help out and use my skills. After the divorce, those repair requests increased significantly. In the past year alone, I had completely remodeled their bathroom, rebuilt the sagging deck that had become a safety hazard, replaced all the lighting fixtures in the house, fixed their constantly malfunctioning HVAC system, and repaired their roof after a storm. Each job would have cost thousands if they'd hired professionals. I never asked for payment. They were helping me with childcare after all, and I was grateful for that. But sometimes, I wondered if they realized just how much time and energy these projects took. Between working full-time, raising 2 energetic 5-year-olds, and maintaining my own home, I was constantly exhausted. Still, whenever Dad would call with that familiar, "Hazel, I could use your expertise on something," I would gather my tools and head over. Our arrangement had fallen into a comfortable pattern. I would drop Noah and Emma off at my parents' house at 7:30 in the morning on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Mom would have breakfast waiting for them, and Dad would have some activity planned, usually something educational that he thought would give them a head start in school. I would pick them up after work sometimes, staying for dinner if Mom insisted. Looking back, there had been signs that something was changing. Mom had mentioned feeling tired more often. Dad had made comments about their friends going on cruises and cross-country trips. "Must be nice to have that kind of freedom," he would say, glancing meaningfully at the twins. But they never sat me down for a serious conversation about childcare. Never gave me any indication that they were planning to make a drastic change. I should also mention my brother Patrick and his wife Amanda. They live just 20 minutes from our parents, but they've never been the type to offer help. Patrick works in finance, making significantly more money than I do, and Amanda doesn't work outside their home. They have no children by choice and have never hidden their opinion that my life choices have made things unnecessarily difficult. The week before Thanksgiving, I received some news that should have been purely positive. I was offered a promotion at work, moving up to senior project manager. It meant a 20% pay increase, but also longer hours and occasional weekend work. I was excited but worried about childcare. I planned to discuss options with my parents after the holiday. That Thanksgiving was supposed to be a celebration. I had spent days preparing dishes to bring to my parents' house. The twins had made handprint turkeys and grateful for cards for their grandparents. I had even taken Wednesday off work to bake 3 different pies, knowing they were Dad's favorite. Little did I know that my world was about to be turned upside down over stuffing and cranberry sauce. Thanksgiving Day began like any other family gathering. I woke up early, got the twins dressed in their special holiday outfits, and packed up my car with all the dishes I'd prepared. Noah and Emma were buzzing with excitement, chattering nonstop about seeing Grandma and Grandpa and eating all the yummy food. We arrived at my parents' house at 10 in the morning as agreed. Mom greeted us at the door with hugs for the kids, but seemed distracted. Dad was watching football in the living room and barely looked up when we entered. Still, I thought nothing of it. Dad had always been more reserved than demonstrative. "I brought everything we talked about," I said, unloading containers from my bags. "Sweet potato casserole, green bean casserole, cranberry sauce, and 3 pies. The cornbread stuffing is still warm." "That's nice, dear," Mom said, taking the dishes. "Your father has been so looking forward to your pies." I set the twins up with coloring books at the kitchen table and rolled up my sleeves. "What can I help with? The turkey needs basting." For the next few hours, I worked alongside Mom in the kitchen while the kids colored and occasionally ran in to show Dad their artwork. I noticed Mom seemed quieter than usual, but attributed it to the stress of hosting. When I asked if everything was okay, she just patted my hand and said, "Let's just have a nice holiday, shall we?" Patrick and Amanda finally arrived at 2 o'clock, an hour later than they'd promised. They came empty-handed, despite Mom having asked them to bring drinks and appetizers. Amanda Eyre kissed everyone and immediately began telling us about their recent weekend trip to New York City. "The plaza was divine," she said, sipping the wine I had brought. "You really should treat yourself sometimes, Hazel. All work and no play, you know how it is." I bit my tongue and continued helping Mom get everything on the table. By 3:30, we were all seated around my parents' formal dining table. The twins were at a small card table nearby that I had decorated with Thanksgiving-themed plates and crafts. Dinner started pleasantly enough. We passed dishes around, complimented the food, and engaged in surface-level conversation about work and weather. Dad carved the turkey with precision, giving everyone generous portions. Mom kept fussing over whether everyone had enough to eat. It wasn't until we were halfway through the meal that Dad cleared his throat in that way he does when he has something important to say. The table quieted, and I noticed Mom suddenly became very interested in rearranging the food on her plate. "Now that we're all here," Dad began setting down his fork, "there's something your mother and I want to announce." I smiled, expecting news about a vacation or perhaps some home improvement project they were planning. What came next blindsided me completely. "We've decided that we're not going to babysit the twins anymore," he stated flatly, as if he were commenting on the weather. "Your mother and I need our retirement back." I froze, fork halfway to my mouth, certain I had misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" "We're done with the babysitting," he repeated, his voice firmer. "We've put in our time as parents. We raised you and Patrick. Now we want to enjoy our golden years." I looked at Mom, hoping for some clarification or softening of this bombshell, but she just nodded. "We're not getting any younger, Hazel. It's a lot watching active children 3 days a week." "But," I set my fork down, carefully aware of Noah and Emma at their table nearby. Why are you bringing this up now at Thanksgiving dinner? Because we wanted everyone to know at the same time, Dad replied. We're booking a 3-month cruise in January. We've been putting it off for years because of our commitments. I felt a cold shock spreading through my body as the implications sank in. January was just over a month away. There was no way I could arrange reliable, affordable childcare that quickly, especially with my new job responsibilities looming. You couldn't have given me more notice, I asked, struggling to keep my voice level. Or discuss this privately first. We're telling you now, Dad said dismissively. That's notice. I glanced over at Patrick and Amanda, who were exchanging knowing looks. Amanda had a small, satisfied smile playing at her lips. You knew about this? I asked them. Patrick shrugged. They mentioned it a few weeks ago. Honestly, Hazel, it's about time. They've been chained to your childcare needs for years. Chained? I repeated the word, feeling like a slap. Well, you know what I mean. Patrick backpedaled slightly. They deserve their freedom. You'll figure it out, Dad added, already returning to his meal as if the matter were settled. Hire help like normal people. Normal people. The words stung more than they should have. I looked around the table at my parents calmly eating turkey, at my brother and his wife with their barely concealed smugness, and suddenly all the times I had dropped everything to help them flashed through my mind. The bathroom remodel I had spent 3 consecutive weekends completing. The deck I rebuilt in sweltering August heat. The roof repair that had left me with a sprained wrist. All done without complaint, without compensation, because that's what family does for each other. Or so I thought. Emma came over then, tugging at my sleeve. Mommy, can I have more juice? I poured her juice with slightly trembling hands, painfully aware that my entire support system was crumbling before my eyes. When Emma went back to her table, I took a deep breath and tried again. Could we discuss this privately after dinner? This affects my entire work schedule and the kids' routine. I just got offered a promotion that will require longer hours. There's nothing to discuss, Dad said firmly. We've made our decision. You'll figure it out. You're resourceful. We love the children, of course, Mom added quickly. But we're tired, Hazel. We want to travel while we still can. I looked at my mother, really looked at her, and saw not fatigue, but excitement in her eyes. She wasn't tired of my children. She was tired of putting her plans on hold. I understand wanting to travel, I said carefully. But the way you're doing this with no discussion, no transition plan? You're being dramatic, Patrick interjected. Plenty of single parents manage without free grandparent daycare. And how many of them provide free home renovation services in exchange? I shot back before I could stop myself. The table fell silent. Dad's expression darkened. Is that what this is about? He asked. You keep score of what you do for us. No, I said, feeling heat rise in my face. But apparently, you've been keeping score of what you do for me. We've done enough for you, Dad said, his tone final. More than enough. And that's when something inside me snapped. Years of biting my tongue, of dropping everything when they called, of never asking for anything beyond what they had already offered, and this was how they repaid me. With a public announcement at Thanksgiving dinner that they were done, as if my children and I were some burden they could no longer tolerate. Seriously? I said, my voice quiet but steady. Then I guess I'm done too. No more repairs, no more renovations, no more dropping everything when something breaks. The shock on Dad's face would have been comical under different circumstances. For perhaps the first time in my life, I had truly surprised him. What are you talking about? He sputtered. That's completely different. Is it? I asked, standing up. You're withdrawing your support, so I'm withdrawing mine. Seems perfectly fair to me. You can't just refuse to help us, Mom said, looking genuinely bewildered. We're your parents. And they're your grandchildren, I replied, gesturing toward Noah and Emma. But apparently family obligation only goes one way in this house. Patrick pushed his chair back roughly. You're being ungrateful, after everything they've done for you. And what exactly have you done, Patrick? I asked, turning to him. Besides, show up late and empty-handed to every family gathering, Amanda gasped dramatically. How dare you speak to him that way? I ignored her and began gathering the twins' belongings. Noah, Emma, we're going home now. But Mommy, we haven't had pie yet, Noah protested. We'll have pie at home. I promised, helping them with their jackets. I could feel everyone's eyes on me as I calmly but efficiently packed up our things. You're overreacting, Dad said, but I detected a note of uncertainty in his voice. Perhaps he was just now realizing the implications of his declaration. No, I'm finally reacting, I corrected him. Enjoy your cruise. I hope the contractors don't overcharge you too much. With that, I ushered my confused children out the door, leaving behind the pies I had spent hours baking and a family that had taken me for granted one too many times. The drive home was difficult. Noah and Emma sensed something was wrong and kept asking why we left early, why we didn't have dessert, why Grandpa looked angry. I tried to answer their questions honestly, but in a way their 5-year-old minds could understand. Grandma and Grandpa need to take a break from watching you during the day, I explained as gently as I could. They want to go on a long trip. But who will take care of us when you're at work? Emma asked, her small face scrunched with worry. I'm going to figure that out. I promised, though I had no idea how. We might try a new after-school program, or maybe make some new friends who can help us. Will we still see Grandma and Grandpa? Noah wanted to know. I hesitated. Yes, but maybe not as often for a while. By the time we got home, the twins were tired and cranky. I let them watch a movie while I made hot chocolate and served slices of the backup pie I had wisely kept at home. Once they were settled in bed, I finally allowed myself to feel the full impact of what had happened. I turned off my phone, not ready to deal with the inevitable fallout. Then I sat at my kitchen table with a calculator, a notepad, and a growing sense of panic. Childcare for 2 children would cost at least $1,500 a month. My promotion would help, but not enough to cover that, plus all our other expenses comfortably. As I ran the numbers, memories of all the times I'd helped my parents flooded back. The bathroom remodel that would have cost them at least $8,000 if they'd hired professionals. I had taken vacation days to complete it, working 12-hour shifts to get it done in time for their anniversary. The deck rebuild last summer in 100-degree heat. That would have been at least $10,000 from a contractor. I remembered Dad bringing me lemonade once during the 3 weekends it took, as if that were adequate compensation. The roof repair after last winter's storms. The HVAC system troubleshooting that saved them from buying a new unit. The kitchen faucet installation. The garage door opener. The ceiling fan in every bedroom. The list went on and on. I realized with growing clarity that my father had begun to see me less as a daughter and more as a free handyman service. His requests had increased in frequency and complexity over the years, always prefaced with, "Since you're so good at this sort of thing," or, "It would cost a fortune to hire someone." And I had always said yes, because that's what family does. Or at least, that's what I thought family did. I spent Saturday researching childcare options, calling facilities that probably thought I was crazy for seeking January openings in November. Most were full with waiting lists. The few that had openings were far outside my budget. My neighbor Lisa stopped by with her daughter Zoe, who was in the same kindergarten class as the twins. When she saw my distress, she offered to help with after-school care temporarily while I sorted things out. It wasn't a permanent solution, but it was a start. I also drafted an email to my boss, Jeffrey, explaining that I would need to adjust my schedule temporarily due to family circumstances. I still wanted the promotion, but would need flexibility during the transition. It was a risk, but Jeffrey had always been understanding about my situation as a single parent. Sunday morning, the twins asked if we were going to Grandma and Grandpa's house, as we often did after church. I explained again that we were taking a break from our usual routine. They didn't fully understand, but they accepted my suggestion of a trip to the park instead. As I watched them play, I felt my resolve strengthening. My parents' decision had hurt me deeply, but it had also opened my eyes. I had been allowing myself to be taken advantage of for years, always putting everyone else's needs before my own. Perhaps it was time to establish some long overdue boundaries. Sunday evening, I prepared for the week ahead. I arranged for Lisa to pick up the twins along with Zoe after school for the next few days. I packed their lunches, laid out their clothes, and tried to create as much normalcy as possible despite the chaos I felt inside. Just before bed, I took a deep breath and turned my phone back on. As expected, it immediately began buzzing with notifications. 27 missed calls, 42 text messages. Most from my parents and Patrick, a few from concerned friends who had heard something had happened at Thanksgiving. I wasn't ready to read them yet. I turned the phone to silent, set my alarm, and tried to sleep. Tomorrow would be soon enough to face the storm. Monday morning arrived too quickly after a restless night. I got the twins ready for school with our usual routine, trying to maintain a sense of normalcy despite the anxiety churning inside me. After dropping them off, I sat in my car in the school parking lot and finally looked at my phone. The barrage of messages was overwhelming. My mother's texts started with concern, quickly shifted to guilt trips, and finally settled into passive-aggressive disappointment. "I thought we raised you better than this." Read her last message from late Sunday night. My father was more direct in his anger. "You're being childish and ungrateful," he had written. "After everything we've done for you, call us immediately." His final message was what really made my blood boil. "The kitchen sink is leaking and I've scheduled the contractor to come Wednesday. Cancel this nonsense and come fix it." Patrick's messages were the worst. He had moved from accusatory, "How dare you upset Mom and Dad like this," to threatening, "If you don't fix this, I will." His wife Amanda had chimed in too, with a long paragraph about family loyalty that reeked of hypocrisy coming from someone who had never lifted a finger to help anyone. There were also several missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize, which I later discovered were contractors my father had contacted for quotes. Apparently, he had given them my number as an alternative contact. The entitlement was staggering. I put my phone away and drove to work, trying to focus on the day ahead. I had a meeting with Jeffrey about my promotion, and I needed to be clear-headed. Thankfully, he was understanding about my childcare situation and agreed to flexible hours during the transition period. The promotion was still mine if I wanted it. "Family stuff is complicated," he said sympathetically. "Take the time you need to sort things out. We value you here, Hazel." His words were a balm after the harsh messages from my family. At least someone appreciated my contributions. Around lunchtime, my phone rang with my mother's number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Hazel, this has gone on long enough," she said without preamble. "Your father and I are coming to your office to talk. We'll be there at 2. Before I could protest, she had hung up. I sat staring at my phone in disbelief. They were coming to my workplace. To what publicly confront me as they had at Thanksgiving, I alerted security that I was expecting visitors, but might need assistance if things got heated. Then I warned my team that I might be dealing with a personal matter in the afternoon. True to their word, my parents arrived at 2 o'clock sharp. I met them in the parking lot, not wanting to bring this drama into my workplace any more than necessary. "This is completely inappropriate," I said as they approached. You don't show up at my job to discuss personal matters. You left us no choice, Dad replied, his face flushed with anger. You've ignored our calls and messages. I needed time to process the bomb you dropped on Thanksgiving, I countered. And to make arrangements for my children since you've decided they're no longer your concern. Don't be so dramatic, Mom said. We're not abandoning them. We just can't provide free childcare anymore. Just like I can't provide free home repairs anymore, I replied evenly. Dad's face reddened further. That's why we're here. The kitchen has a major leak. The contractor wants $400 just to look at it. You need to come fix it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything that had happened, he still expected me to drop everything and run to their rescue. No, I said simply. What do you mean, no? Dad looked genuinely shocked. I mean, no, I won't be fixing your leak. Call the contractor back and hire him. That's what normal people do, right? Mom started to cry, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue she pulled from her purse. Hazel, please. We're leaving for our cruise in January. We need the house in good shape before we go. And there it was. The real reason for their visit. Not concern for our relationship. Not worry about their grandchildren, but fear that their travel plans might be impacted if they had to pay for the repairs I had always provided for free. That sounds like a you problem, I said, surprising myself with how calm I felt. You've made it clear that my childcare problems are mine to solve, so your home repair problems are yours to solve. Is that what this is about? Dad demanded. You're punishing us because we want our freedom. No, I replied. I'm establishing boundaries. You're free to make your choices, and I'm free to make mine. Your grandfather would be ashamed of you, Dad said, hitting below the belt. He taught you those skills to help family not to withhold when you're angry. Don't you dare bring him into this, I said, my voice finally betraying my emotion. He taught me those skills because he believed in my abilities, not so I could be taken advantage of for decades. I became aware that several of my co-workers had paused near the building entrance watching our confrontation. Jeffrey had come outside too, hovering nearby in case I needed support. This conversation is over, I said firmly. I have to get back to work. The work that pays for my house, my children's needs, and now their childcare since you've decided your grandparenting duties are too burdensome. This isn't the end of this discussion, Dad warned as I turned to leave. You're right about that, I agreed. But the next time we talk, it will be on my terms, not with you ambushing me at my workplace. As I walked back to the building, Jeffrey fell into step beside me. Everything okay? It will be, I said, and for the first time since Thanksgiving, I actually believed it. The rest of the afternoon was a blur of meetings and emails, but my phone continued to explode with messages. Patrick had apparently been informed of my refusal to help, and his texts had escalated to outright threats to fix the family problems himself. I blocked his number. That evening, as I sat with Noah and Emma at dinner, Emma looked up at me with serious eyes. Mommy, are Grandma and Grandpa mad at us? My heart broke a little. No, sweetheart, they're not mad at you at all. They love you very much. Then why don't they want to see us anymore? Noah asked. I chose my words carefully. Sometimes adults make choices that are about what they want, not about how much they love other people. Grandma and Grandpa want to travel and do things they couldn't do when they were taking care of you during the day. And you're mad at them, Emma persisted. I'm disappointed in how they told us, I explained. When people care about each other, they talk about big changes and try to find solutions together. They don't just announce decisions without considering how it affects everyone. Like how Daddy left? Noah asked innocently, out of the mouths of babes. Yes, something like that, I admitted. But we're going to be just fine. We have each other and we have friends who care about us, and we'll figure everything else out. That night, after tucking them into bed, I sat down and wrote a long email. Not to my parents or Patrick, but to myself. I listed all the things I had been doing for others and all the ways I had neglected my own needs. I made a commitment to establish healthier boundaries, not just with my family, but in all areas of my life. It was time for a change, and despite the difficulty ahead, I felt more empowered than I had in years. By Tuesday morning, it became clear that a formal conversation was necessary to establish new family dynamics. I texted both my parents and Patrick suggesting we meet at the corner cafe on Saturday morning, a neutral public location where everyone would hopefully remain civil. I'll bring my friend Taylor as support, I added. This needs to be a calm, rational discussion about moving forward. Dad replied immediately, "We'll be there. Patrick is coming too for support." I had expected that. Patrick had always been Dad's ally in family disputes, though he usually contributed little beyond nodding in agreement with whatever Dad said. The next few days passed in a blur of logistics. Lisa continued picking up the twins along with her daughter after school. I interviewed 2 potential regular babysitters, though neither seemed quite right. My boss approved my flexible schedule for the next month while I sorted out permanent childcare. Through it all, the messages from my family continued. Mom had taken to sending photos of the twins from previous visits with captions like, "Remember these happy times?" Dad was more focused on the practical problems mounting in their house, sending pictures of the leaking sink, a malfunctioning garage door opener, and a loose banister on the stairs. On Friday afternoon, I met with Taylor for coffee to prepare for the next day's confrontation. Taylor had been my best friend since college and knew my family dynamic well. "You need to be clear about your boundaries," she advised. "Don't let them manipulate you with tears or anger or guilt. They made their choice, and you're entitled to make yours." "I'm not trying to punish them," I admitted. "I just can't keep giving and giving with nothing in return. It's not sustainable." "Of course it's not," Taylor agreed. "And honestly, it's not healthy for any of you. Your parents need to see you as an adult with your own needs, not just their handyman daughter." I spent Friday night preparing. I made a list of all the major repairs and renovations I had done for my parents over the past 3 years with estimated market values for each project. I also calculated the cost of professional childcare for twins. The numbers were eye-opening, even to me. Saturday morning arrived bright and clear. I dropped the twins at their friend Zoe's house, where Lisa had agreed to watch them during the meeting. Then I picked up Taylor and drove to the corner cafe. We arrived 15 minutes early, but my parents and Patrick were already there, seated at a corner table. No sign of Amanda, which was a small mercy. Sam, the cafe owner, who had known our family for years, gave me an encouraging nod as we walked in. Word travels fast in small towns, and I suspected he knew something of our situation. "Good morning," I said politely as Taylor and I sat down. I introduced her, though everyone already knew each other. "Let's get to the point," Dad said immediately. "This situation is ridiculous and needs to end now." "I agree that we need clarity," I replied calmly, unfolding my papers. "So, I've prepared some information that might help us understand each other better." I placed the itemized list of repairs on the table. "This is a conservative estimate of the market value of the work I've done for you over the past 3 years alone. As you can see, it totals just over $42,000. Dad barely glanced at it. "That's what family does. We help each other." "I agree completely," I said, placing the second paper beside it. "And this is the market value of the childcare you've provided, 3 days a week for 3 years at standard rates. It comes to approximately $34,000. Mom picked up this paper, her eyes widening slightly at the figures. "So, as you can see," I continued, "I've more than compensated you for the childcare you've provided. But this isn't about keeping score. It's about mutual respect and consideration." "You're nickel and diming your own parents?" Patrick interjected. "After everything they've done for you." "No," I corrected him. I'm demonstrating that family support should go both ways. When Dad announced they were done babysitting with no discussion, no transition plan right in the middle of Thanksgiving dinner, it showed a complete lack of consideration for me and the twins. "We deserve our retirement," Dad insisted. "We've earned it." "And I respect that," I said sincerely. "I've never expected you to provide free childcare forever. But there are ways to have that conversation respectfully privately with adequate notice." "We gave you notice," Mom protested weakly. "You made a unilateral decision and announced it publicly to maximize the pressure on me," I corrected. "That's not how you treat someone you respect." Sam appeared then with coffee for everyone, though we hadn't ordered yet. "On the house," he said with a wink at me. As he set Dad's cup down, he added casually, "Your daughter did a beautiful job on my sister's kitchen renovation last year. Saved her thousands. You must be proud to have raised such a skilled and generous daughter." Dad shifted uncomfortably as Sam walked away. I hadn't realized that Sam knew about my handywoman skills or that I had helped his sister. The coincidence felt like a small validation. "Hazel has always been good with her hands," Mom acknowledged quietly. "Yes, and you've bragged about it to everyone," Taylor spoke up. "About how much money you save because your daughter can fix anything. Hazel has told me about calls at 10 p.m. to fix your dishwasher request to come over on her only day off to rebuild your deck. She's never complained to you, but it takes a toll." I gave Taylor a grateful look. Sometimes it helps to have someone else articulate what you've been feeling. "So what exactly do you want?" Dad asked bluntly. "Money for past repairs, because that's not happening." "I don't want your money," I said. "I want mutual respect. I want recognition that my time and skills have value. And going forward, I want reciprocity in our relationship." "Meaning?" Mom prompted. "Meaning if you want my help with repairs, I expect your help with childcare. If you're no longer willing to help with childcare, then I'm no longer willing to be your personal contractor. It's that simple." "That's blackmail," Patrick accused. "No, it's a boundary," Taylor countered before I could respond. "And it's long overdue." Dad leaned forward, his expression stern. "So these are your terms. You'll only help us if we babysit." "No," I clarified. "My terms are that our relationship needs to be reciprocal. That can take many forms. Maybe you can't do 3 days of childcare anymore, but you could do 1 day. Or occasional evenings. Or help in other ways that accommodate your travel plans. I'm open to discussion about what works for everyone, but what I won't accept is being taken for granted anymore." Mom looked thoughtful, but Dad's expression hardened. "And if we refuse, if we want our complete freedom, then you're welcome to hire contractors for your home repairs, just as I'll hire childcare providers. We can still have a relationship as family, but it won't include me dropping everything to fix your house." Dad stood up abruptly. "This is an ultimatum. Either we babysit or you won't help us, after everything we've done for you over the years." "Everything you've done for me," I repeated, my calm finally slipping. "Like announcing at Thanksgiving dinner in front of my brother and his wife that you were abandoning your commitment to help with my children. Like showing up at my workplace to demand I fix your kitchen. Like calling me ungrateful for establishing a simple boundary." Patrick stood too. "You're being selfish, Hazel. They're getting older. They don't need the stress." "And I don't need the stress of being your family's unpaid contractor while raising 2 children alone," I replied, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "I've bent over backwards for years to accommodate everyone's needs but my own. That stops now." Dad threw his napkin on the table. "Come on, Martha. Patrick, we're done here. When she comes to her senses, she can call us." Mom hesitated, looking between Dad and me with uncertainty. For a moment, I thought she might stay, might try to bridge the gap that was widening between us. But then she gathered her purse and stood. "The children miss you," she said softly. "They miss you too." I replied. And they don't understand why Thanksgiving ended the way it did. That's on you to explain next time you see them. They left Patrick throwing one last glare over his shoulder. As the door closed behind them, I slumped in my chair, emotional exhaustion washing over me. Taylor reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You did great. You were clear, reasonable, and stood your ground. Sam appeared with 2 slices of pie. Looks like you could use these, he said kindly. For what it's worth, I think you're in the right. Family should support each other, not take advantage. Thank you. I managed fighting back tears. And if you're looking for childcare, Sam continued, my niece Brooke just moved back to town. She has a degree in early childhood education and is looking for work while she applies to schools. I could put you in touch. It was a small gesture of support, but it meant the world to me in that moment. As Taylor and I ate our pie, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from a number I didn't recognize. This is Jerry from All Pro Contractors. Just wanted to let you know your father hired us to fix his kitchen sink. Our quote was $400 for diagnosis and likely another $600 to $800 for the repair depending on the extent of the damage. I showed the message to Taylor and we both burst into slightly hysterical laughter. Dad had clearly given the contractor my number as a backup, not expecting that I would actually hold firm on my boundary. 4 times what it would cost in materials for you to fix it, Taylor noted. And about 8 times what it would cost in my time, I agreed. But that's his choice now. As we left the cafe, another text came through, this one from my mother. The cruise has been canceled. Your father says we can't afford it with all the repair costs. I felt a momentary pang of guilt, quickly replaced by resolve. This wasn't my doing. This was the natural consequence of their choices. For years, they had benefited from my skills without fully valuing them. Now, they were learning exactly what those skills were worth. No response needed, Taylor advised, reading over my shoulder. Let them sit with their decisions for a while. She was right. I pocketed my phone and drove to pick up my children, determined to focus on building a new support system for our family, one based on mutual respect and genuine care. 6 months can change everything. As summer began to warm the air, I looked around my backyard, where a small gathering of friends and neighbors had assembled for a barbecue, and marveled at how different my life had become since that fateful Thanksgiving. The most immediate change had been childcare. Through Sam's introduction, I met Brooke, who turned out to be a godsend. She took on watching the twins 3 days a week, while continuing her job search for teaching positions. The kids adored her enthusiasm and creativity. For the other 2 days, I joined a neighborhood childcare co-op that Lisa had helped organize. 5 families each taking 1 day to watch all the children after school. It meant 1 busy day a week for me, but 4 days of covered childcare. The children thrived in the social environment, making new friends and developing independence. Professionally, the promotion had been everything I'd hoped for. The flexible hours Jeffrey arranged during my transition period had been temporary, but they'd given me time to establish new routines. Now I was fully settled into my role as senior project manager with a team of my own and a salary that made the childcare expenses manageable. Perhaps the most unexpected development had been my relationship with Jim, my elderly neighbor who had been watching my home improvement projects with interest for years. When he saw me replacing my own water heater in March, he'd come over to offer assistance. "Reminds me of myself at your age," he'd said, handing me a wrench. "I was a mechanical engineer for 40 years before retiring." We'd struck up a friendship with Jim, offering tips from his decades of experience and even teaching me new skills I hadn't learned from my grandfather. In return, I helped him with projects around his house that had become too physically demanding as he aged. "That's how it should work," he'd commented once. "Trading skills, helping each other out. No scorekeeping, just mutual respect." As for my parents, the road had been rockier. Their cruise had indeed been canceled, partly due to repair costs, but also because Dad had developed minor health issues that made long travel inadvisable. The irony wasn't lost on me. that had they maintained our previous arrangement, I could have fixed their home for the cost of materials, and they could have afforded their dream cruise. For 2 months after our cafe confrontation, communication had been minimal and strained. Mom would occasionally send messages about missing the twins, to which I would respond with brief updates, but no invitations to visit. Dad remained silent entirely. Patrick, surprisingly, had been the first to crack. In March, he'd shown up at my door unannounced, looking uncomfortable but determined. "Amanda and I went over to help Dad with some yard work," he'd admitted. "It was a disaster. 4 hours to do what you probably could have done in 1. And he complained the entire time about how expensive contractors are." "I'm sorry to hear that," I'd said neutrally. Patrick had shifted from foot to foot. "I may have underestimated what you've been doing for them all these years," he'd finally said, which was as close to an apology as I was likely to get. From there, a cautious reconciliation had begun. Patrick and I had coffee occasionally. He seemed to be seeing our parents through new eyes, noticing patterns of entitlement and manipulation he'd previously been blind to as the favored son. In April, Mom had called her voice small and hesitant. "The twins' birthday is coming up. We'd like to see them if that's okay." I'd agreed to a short visit at a neutral location, a playground where the children could play and the adults could talk. It had been awkward but civil. Dad had brought small gifts for Noah and Emma but said little to me directly. Gradually, over more such visits, Mom had begun to express regret about how things had happened. "We should have talked to you privately," she'd admitted during a particularly candid moment. "We didn't think about how it would affect you and the children. We were just thinking about ourselves." Dad had taken longer to come around. It wasn't until May, when their air conditioning had failed during an unseasonable heat wave, that he'd finally reached out directly. "The HVAC company wants $3,000, he'd said without preamble when I answered his call. "I wondered if you might take a look at it." "I'd be happy to," I'd replied. "What day will you be available to watch the twins while I'm working on it?" A long pause had followed. I'd almost been able to hear him wrestling with his pride. Finally, he'd said, "Saturday would work. We could take them to the park while you check the system." "Perfect," I'd agreed. "I'll bring them by at 9. That single exchange had marked a turning point. I'd fixed their AC for the cost of a $200 part, saving them thousands. They'd spent the day with their grandchildren, tentatively rebuilding the relationship that had been damaged. Since then, we'd established a new understanding. I helped with repairs when asked. They helped with occasional childcare, or in other ways. Mom had started picking up the twins one afternoon a week, taking them to various activities. Dad had begun teaching Noah basic woodworking, something that gave both of them joy. It wasn't the same as before. I was more selective about which projects I took on for them, and they were more thoughtful about how and when they asked for help. But it was healthier, more balanced, with a new foundation of mutual respect. As I flipped burgers on the grill in my backyard, watching Noah and Emma play with their friends, I reflected on how the painful rupture at Thanksgiving had ultimately led to positive change in all our lives. The twins had a broader support network now, not dependent solely on their grandparents. I had established boundaries that allowed me to preserve my energy and self-respect. Even my parents seemed to have gained a new appreciation for the value of reciprocal relationships. Jim wandered over to the grill, a cold drink in his hand. "Those are coming along nicely," he commented, nodding at the burgers. "Thanks to your tip about the onion juice in the patties," I replied with a smile. "Wisdom of the ages," he chuckled. "Say, I was wondering if you might help me design a ramp for my back steps next weekend. The knees aren't what they used to be." "I'd be happy to," I said. "The twins would love to help too. They're getting pretty good with measuring and marking." "Perfect," Jim nodded. "And I'll show Noah that model train setup in the basement he's been asking about." This was how community was supposed to work, I thought. People helping each other, sharing skills and time, no scorekeeping, just genuine care. Lisa approached, refilling plates for her kids. That childcare co-op was the best idea ever, she said. Zoe talks about Wednesdays at your house all week. Those engineering projects you do with the kids are a hit. They love it too, I assured her. It's nice to share what I know with the next generation. My phone buzzed with a text. It was from my mother. Just wanted to say the new faucet is working perfectly. Your father says you did a better job than any contractor would have. We're looking forward to having the twins over next weekend. Love you. I smiled as I texted back a quick acknowledgement. Progress was happening step by step. Across the yard, I saw Noah showing Patrick how to launch the water rocket we'd built together. My brother had been showing up more often lately, making an effort to be present in the twins' lives in a way he never had before. People could change if given the right motivation and example. Mommy, look! Emma called, racing up with a small birdhouse she and Jim had built earlier. I made this for the backyard. It's beautiful, sweetheart. I told her, admiring her work. You're becoming quite the builder yourself. Just like you, she said proudly. Jim says I have your good hands. As she ran off to show her creation to the other children, I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. The painful confrontation at Thanksgiving had been necessary, a catalyst for change that had ultimately led to something better for everyone involved. By standing up for myself and my children, by refusing to continue in an unhealthy dynamic, I had created space for new, healthier relationships to flourish. Love without respect isn't really love at all. That was the lesson I had learned, the lesson I was teaching my children through example. Healthy relationships require boundaries, mutual respect, and reciprocity. Sometimes the hardest part is having the courage to establish those boundaries, especially with family. But on the other side of that difficult conversation lies the possibility of genuine connection, of relationships built on mutual care rather than obligation or scorekeeping. That's the kind of family I want for my children, the kind of community I want to belong to. As I looked around at the gathering in my backyard, at the network of support we had built over the past 6 months, I knew that while the path hadn't been easy, it had led us exactly where we needed to be. And for that, despite everything, I was profoundly grateful. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with family members who were taking you for granted? How did you handle it? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more real-life lessons. Remember, sometimes the hardest conversations lead to the healthiest relationships. Thank you for watching, and I wish you the courage to stand up for yourself when needed.